Came out the bottom, I count a whole lot of young gunner worth millions of dollars. I ass out the charm, my little bitch a model. She made a few ends off a follow. You wanna on tour, a BP the child. Live in a crew, I'm a title. Ain't no more worries, I'm up at it early. Young niggas tryna figure out the problem. For 30-30, I hit it like Curry. They hit me, I don't even holler. These niggas so floppy. Niggas ain't gon' stop me. Switch out my cars and my addy, my family straight, and that's all that matter. Stacking them rest and then saving, put back for whatever, whenever it happens. I put my trust in my paper, when I'm walking through straight, I don't see no one else. No, it ain't long this route. Simmons is better than steps. Stay ready, I'm already prepped. Undefeated, I feel like the champ.
Cool. What's up, KO Universe family? We're back again for our 5th episode. This is continuation of the story of high school football for me. If you see here, I got on the Perry Commodores hoodie. This is my hoodie from high school, man. Like, this is crazy. Got my number stitched in it. I got this from another teammate, good friend of mine. Then he actually, my freshman year, he gave me this. Shout out to Greg. I don't know if he'll ever watch this, but he gave me this, man. I cherished it and never looked back. So 80 was the number I wore in high school. You guys know I was a wide receiver, so and then hence the nickname Plex. It was only right to get 80, even though my favorite number, I would say, is number 1. 80 is right there with it. But yeah, I got the Perry Commodores. Go Commodores. Yeah, anchors for life. So yeah, let's get into it. This episode we'll talk about not just my high school journey, but of course, like, I always give you guys a little bit of backstory and real life stuff, that I was going through during those times. Just keep the focus of the podcast on what we want to get out of it. We could sit here and talk, stats and numbers and things like that. I don't really want to get into that. I want to focus more on the real life things and again the obstacles and challenges that we overcome, and some of the ones that I overcame in high school. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a little bit of recruiting and how that was for me. And then, man, grades. You parents out here, I know you guys are like, oh, I want to hear about this one. Grades. And then a huge wake-up call for me that changed my life. So let's talk about those things and let's get to it. So Perry, we talked about the last episode, freshman year. I didn't play my freshman year of high school. I trained with the team, did not compete in 9th grade. So I was still playing for Belsuver, if you guys remember, or if you haven't watched it, go back and watch every episode. It'll kind of help tell the story and kind of help you understand what I'm talking about right now. If you're just tuning in, try to catch up. I really try to make these episodes as short as I can and effective as I can. So, yeah, didn't play freshman year. It was kind of more like a red shirt. If you know anything about college football, you sit out a year, you learn, you soak everything in, and you just kind of get a feel for what it's like. And that was the transition for me for from youth football to high school football. And so 10th grade, I got to compete. 10th grade, I started off as a JV guy. JV is mostly for younger guys and experienced guys. 9th grade, 10th grade, sometimes 11th and 12th, depending on the skill level of the athlete. But, they want to see those young guys go, and JV is a good way to kind of see what young talent you got, and evaluate them, and also, get them some experience if they don't have it. Maybe try them out in new positions, things like that. So, briefly about my high school career. I was a 3-sport athlete, and so obviously I played football, all city guy, track and field. I was a sprinter. My coach would call me the medley man, because I was able to do multiple things in track and field, from sprints to distance, field events. I was able to do anything. And so primarily I was a sprinter. My race was the 100 and the 200 meter. 200 meter was my favorite. I was 3-time all city in track and field and sprints, but did some other things for the sake of the team. And where there was a need, I would usually fill in. And so the third sport was volleyball. I did that my senior year. It was the same teammate that gave me this hoodie talked me into playing volleyball, and I was hesitant at first. Didn't want to do it, but he talked me into it, and it was one of the funnest things I had ever done. It really helped my game as well. So yeah, 3-sport athlete. But my bread and butter, my primary passion was football. And so I did all those 3 things. So you can imagine I was a busy kid, doing all those sports. And yes, I was a busy kid. It was nonstop all year round. I was either training or playing something, which was great for me. And I'll give you a reason too. Each episode I try to give a little backstory. And so while I was doing all these things, my cousin, who I told you about in the very beginning, who inspired me to play this game and who pushed me away from the street life that he was living and others around me were living, and he pushed me away and kept encouraging me to stick with my gifts and talents and abilities, which, a lot of those, as a young kid at that time, that I had discovered was football. And so I stuck with those things. I took it, I ran with it. And so landed at Perry. And that was one of the funnest times in my life, playing football and being in school. And so, but backstory, got a little off track, but backstory again, my cousin at this time had gone through, he was involved in a big homicide at Carrick High School. Remember I mentioned Carrick before? I didn't want to go there. He was going there. A lot of the guys that I grew up with, they were going there. I wanted no parts, man. I wanted to get as far away from that environment as I could to try to put myself in the best position to live my dream and pursue my passions. And so at that time, he was, and this is kind of fast forward because it didn't happen freshman year, but it happened during the duration of my high school football career. I was, my cousin had gone through this, right? He was arrested, him and a few other guys, for a homicide at Carrick High School that involved a kid that I played with ninth grade at Belt Suver. We were teammates, but this kid was from a different part of town. So he kind of grew up everywhere, this kid, but he mostly was raised in the rival neighborhood that I grew up in. So there was a clash there, you know, all the time with him, you know, and so I won't speak too much of the details of how this unfolded, but this is something you can look up, so I will share this. The homicide at Carrick involved an old friend and teammate that I had, and my cousin was involved. And so what happened was he got arrested. They went to trial, was found guilty, and ended up that was it for him. The rest of his life he would spend behind bars. And so my cousin, when he was in jail, I would write him all the time. So that was my only way to communicate with him, obviously, which was tough for me because I would always want to, if I needed to talk to him, I could talk to him in person. I knew where he lived. You know, we were always crossing paths, you know, and, you know, I mean, I could call him, whatever. I could go over his house. And so, you know, not having that, the best way was to write. And I had never written a letter to anyone before this. So it was new to me, but I was willing to do it, you know, and he would write. And it was tough, too, because it was limited for me on how much I could send to him, how frequently I could send things to him. So I sent him as much as I could, as frequently as I could. And so that was hard for me to not have access to my cousin, who I call my brother, my older brother, to me, not having direct access to him. I had to write letters. So I was writing him back and forth, man, telling him about the season, telling him about, oh, I scored 3 touchdowns in this game. And, I was in the paper. I would send him everything. And we be laughing in our letters, you know. He say some stuff I'm not going to share. I'm not going to share on here, but, you know, big brother stuff. We would just go back and forth and send letters. And so that was great to be able to do that, but it was still hard for me. And having to deal with that, having to deal with the reality that he's going to spend the rest of his life behind bars, that was so hard for me. So, you know, as I'm playing out my high school career, that was something I was going through. Things with my parents were, I would say, kind of calming down a bit. Still hard, you know. And a lot of those years, 9th grade, 10th grade, it was still pretty hard. But on the back end of high school career, things started to kind of level out, and they were able to be around each other a little bit more. I would say, I would go so far as to say that a part of that was me playing football. It brought my family together. It allowed me to see both my parents in the same stadium, sitting next to each other or near each other. And that was good enough for me. It would bring my sisters around, my friends around. And I love what football did for my family and the community. And so that made this a part of reason why, I can look back on my high school career and really say that I loved it and I enjoyed it. Apart from accomplishments, stats, numbers, like I was, just to share this with you guys, like I was never a stat guy. I was never a stat guy. What I cared about was things that may be a little bit uncommon, right? Most guys play the game. They're playing for, everybody has a different reason. And I don't knock anybody for their reasons of playing the game, right? All I could do is tell my story, right? So, for me, I wasn't a big stat guy. I was more into championships, man. I would do anything. I would train as hard as I possibly could so that we can win out. Like, my standard for winning was high, even at an early age. And it grew and grew and grew. At every level, I really took that approach, and I really, I was willing to play whatever role. I was willing to, I wasn't willing to ride the bench, but I was willing to play a different role in order to, if that was the best thing that was needed for us to accomplish the team goal, which was a championship. And to keep that legacy going. So for me, I didn't play for, being the number one, receiver stat wise. I never thought about that. I never thought about that. Now, did I feel like I was the best receiver on the planet? Yes. When I stepped on the field, as quiet as I was, as humble and shy and whatever you want to call me, monotone. A lot of people just say quiet. I was the quiet kid. But when I put on that helmet, when I put on the shoulder pads, when I put on the jersey, when I looked in the mirror before I walked out of the locker room into the game, I felt like there is no better receiver on this football field than me. And I always felt like that. Now, again, did I care about stats and numbers? No. I just wanted to win the games. I wanted to win the championship, and that was the most important thing to me, as well as seeing my family in the stadium, seeing my friends in the stadium, bringing the school together to watch us play. That stuff mattered to me, those things. So, and then just lessons that the game taught me along the way about myself, and about other people. And so, yeah, background story and a little insight on me and where I was at then, what I was going through then, a little backstory on that. So let's get into JV. So let's go back to that. I started that convo, didn't finish it, right? So let's go back to that. So JV, right? I told you a little bit about that. My first JV game. Let's talk about that, right? First JV game, it's so funny, was against Carrick, right? So we we played our first JV game against Carrick, the school that I did not want to go to, my home school. I knew all the kids. My cousin went to this, to this school, and so we're playing them. So of course I got a little chip on my shoulder coming into this game, and my first catch, Jordan Lucy was my quarterback. Beast of a quarterback. He was a lefty. Of course, I was on the left side, so he would hook me up often, and threw me a hitch, 5-yard hitch. I caught it, broke the first tackle, gone. It was the whole length of the field, and I don't even think we were using the whole length of the field. I don't think we were using 100 yards. We might have, because we were playing in a baseball field, right? So it wasn't marked off accurately, but it felt like at least a good 60 yards or so. It was a long one. So I broke the first tackle, and once I did that, it was just me and the safety. I knew who the safety was. He was from Belsuver, and he had talked so much trash on me when I was in Belsuver. I don't think he was playing football then. He was a hooper, right? But I can recall him talking trash on me when I was in Belsuver, and I remembered that. And it was just such a good feeling catching that. I look to my right. I see him trying to chase me. I'm like, he's not catching me, right? He's closing in on me, and the feeling of just beating him into the end zone and just staring him down was the greatest feeling. It was also my first catch was a super long touchdown. And it almost reminded me of my time in youth football. Carlington Cougars, my first carry was a super long touchdown. So just looking back on that, it meant a lot to me. So because of that, word got out that I had scored. I scored a few after that as well. And like I said, I knew almost every guy on the team. And so after, they're all, oh man, Kev, man, you weak, bro. You weak. Oh man, you ain't even. And I just scored 3 touchdowns with them. I didn't say too much. I was just like, okay. So we're talking our little trash. They know I still love them. And we went our separate ways. But like I said, word got out from to the coaches, and the coaches were like, "Oh yeah, you're coming off JV. There's no way you're too good for JV." So they put me on varsity. So I was a 3-year varsity guy. I didn't play a ton that year, even though I showed a lot in JV. Like I said, we had a ton of talent ahead of us. From the starters to the bench, man, I think our bench could start. If you took our bench then and started them on another city team, they would hold it down. And so we really had a stacked team then, and that was no exaggeration. I respected the guys, though I was coming for their job. I respected all the guys before me, the receivers that came before me. And shout out to those guys. And so going into 11th grade, I knew I would play a lot more. But again, there were still some seniors who usually our seniors are starters, and they earn it, whether you felt like you were better or not. Like I said, I knew that at Perry, it would be a situation where I may just have to wait my turn and wait till my time comes. And sometimes for some guys, it comes quicker than others. There's a guy, Jared Williams, Perry legend. He was in a class younger than I was. But I would love to get him on the show, actually, so you guys can hear from him. He just got inducted into the City Hall of Fame not too long ago. Congratulations to him and Dre. There's few other guys too, but yeah, Jared was one of those few cases where he played as a freshman. You know, there was some injuries that happened. He was next up, and he just happened to be. I mean, they thought. I'll say this: people thought at Perry that we were recruiting, and you couldn't blame them because our freshmen can come in and ball just as well as a senior. And Jared was one of those guys. I know if I had been given the opportunity, I would have done the same. But like I said, everybody's time is different. And so Jared came in and started as a freshman and never looked back. He got his opportunity on defense, and it earned him more playing time. You know, and just the way to, you know, things played out for him, which is great, because that's what you want. So getting on the field as a freshman was hard at Perry. But again, I knew I had to wait my turn, and so I did that. I played more my junior year, and this is what I really want to get into is recruiting. So for me, the recruiting process was much different than it is today. Now, it's not too far off, but again, it is very different. The exposure level is so much bigger than it was then. And I know I don't look very old, okay, but you know, I graduated 2006, y'all. That's like, I'm getting up there now, right? But, and I'm not ashamed to admit that, right? But I'm gonna be the best, youngest looking, whatever I am, whenever I am. All right. Yeah, so 2006, man, it was a different time. And so, you know, the early 2000s, we were still using VHS. I mean, VHS. Like, wow. So we didn't have social media. I mean, we had like MySpace, which is today's Twitter, you know, and there wasn't like multimedia, photos, videos. It really wasn't that. It was more like tweeting a message, right? And I didn't have MySpace, so somebody who had it can speak on that. But I knew everybody who had it, you know, and how that worked for the most part. But we didn't have what we have today, where, you know, the vehicle where you can use Twitter, share and post your highlights, Instagram, you know, where you could share and post pictures of yourself, highlights, man. Today, where media is at an all-time high, and these guys are going in and covering these high school games and on the sideline, taking pictures, putting videos together. Man, we had none of that. None of that. It was either you're getting in the paper, right, every week for some good reason, or you're playing on TV and you're showing out, which is rare for a city team. We were in the inner city, and so we already didn't get a lot of love and publicity already. even though we were making so much noise, we really made history then. We were, I was a part of that 4 years of just dominance, and that wasn't even the full. This was over a decade of dominance that Perry had really accomplished over such a long time. And so I was a part of 4 years of that, where we were 4-year back-to-back City League champs, and we were undefeated. We were unscored on some years. And so, man, we really did the darn thing, man. And again, even though we did that, college recruits weren't really looking at us that much, and rightfully so. Like, we, I talked to one of my former teammates at Perry about this, Andre Wright, who was a GOAT wide receiver who we both started together. Both came in together, left together, and he was inducted into the Hall of Fame as well. Congrats to Dre. Dre's doing great things for his community now. And man, we talked about this, man, like the recruiting for us, being from the city was a knock, a red flag in recruiting. So there was already a stigma on us in recruiting as a kid coming from the city. Okay. And then most of us came from broken homes, right? They look at that in recruiting. All right. It's a part of the recruiting process. So do you have a 2-parent home? Do you come from good stock? These things matter, and I can go in great detail about all this. I would love to bring somebody in who could speak directly on recruiting and how that process in depth really affects the way somebody is being recruited. But yeah, like, we just had too many strikes and then grades, right? Your average, like, in the city, maybe every 3 or 4 athletes in the city. All right, don't quote me on this, but this is just my experience. Did not have the proper grades to advance to college. And if you speak to any City League player, former City League player, they will tell you that this was a reoccurring theme with us kids in the city, where we just were not making the cut with the grades. And so I had fallen victim of that early on. Now, did I turn it around? Yes. But I learned the hard way, and we'll get into that a little bit more. So, yeah, we got these strikes on us already coming from the city. And so that affected us in recruiting. And so we didn't get a ton of large Power 5 schools at that time. Now, we did, but we didn't get as much as they do today, with compared to the Whippeal schools, more established, have better relationships with Power 5 schools. There's a lot that goes into these things when it comes to recruiting. Like I said, I don't want to spend too much time talking about recruiting in that whole vehicle. But I will say, for me, it was hard to be recruited. And though we did face that adversity in recruiting, it didn't stop me from being recruited from Power 5 schools. So if you're from the city, if you are being recruited by a Division I school, you're something special. You have to be, because we did not have the exposure, because we knew about the red flags and the knocks that we had on us coming out of high school. And so I was still blessed to have multiple offers by my senior year. And so let's talk a little bit more about the wake up call I had, and that'll kind of bring everything home and kind of explain some of the things I briefly spoke on and how it all ties in together, right? So, and then we'll wrap this podcast up. So, fast forward to my senior year, right? I'm a starter. I'm a full-time starter. And, you know, we were tearing the passing league up. All right. We had a big 33 quarterback, Desmond Brentley. Desmond was amazing, man. Rocket arm, could throw it anywhere on the field. Des a winner, and his parents, man, were just pillars in the community. His parents, great parents. They supported our football team. And I actually played with Desmond at Carlington. You know, when I first got there, he was actually the quarterback. So full circle moment. My first year playing football, he was my quarterback, and in high school he was my quarterback as well. But we were doing really well. Kept that undefeated record going, and I was being recruited at this point through actually. So for one, I had no stars. I want to point that out. I was a kid with no stars, man. So I wasn't able to attend Nike camp or Spark camp at that time. Those were the big camps that you want to get into. But my mom, again, she could not afford to send me to these camps. And so the exposure for me was where I was lacking, right? That played a part in how I was recruited. I had the talent. I had the size. I was a 6'1", 185-pound kid, run a 4.4, 4.3. And I could fly. Yeah, I was strong. I was really, though I was lean, I had the build that you want. You know, a lot of guys, like when we talk about our time at Perry, they're like, oh, I was a Division I receiver. Like, the complete receiver that you want, everything you want in a receiver, right? Except I didn't have the grades, so I wasn't complete, Division I wise, but I had Division I talent, right? And so Division I schools saw that. I had a lot of offers from MAC schools, from almost every MAC school, Hofstra. Was getting interest from Boise State, even starting to get some out of the state interest through recruiters would tell me they saw me on my quarterback's film. And so they would watch my quarterback's film. He was getting recruited by, you know, a lot of the Power 5 schools, and they would see me and they would inquire about me. So what me and Jared would do, I mentioned Jared earlier. Me and Jared would have a crate in the weight room, and if I bring him on, he could tell you all about it. If he's ever on the show, we had this crate, and it was full of letters. All right, so that's it. It wasn't tweets, it wasn't DMs. All right. It was just straight letters, man. So some of those letters get lost in the sauce. You know how mail is. If you're an old school, old folk person, mail isn't the most efficient thing. All right, now you got DMs. You can, boom, send things right away. You could talk. And so I didn't have a cell phone. They were blowing up teams were blowing up my mom's phone, and she had this old Nokia. You know what I mean? There's no touch screen. There's none of that, man. So again, times were different, and recruiting was different for me. But again, we have this crate, and we have letters from teams. So myself and just a few of us would have all the Division I teams as far as interests, visits, offers, all that. I was a part of that bunch that was being recruited Division I. Now, to the wake up call, I had a counselor. Her name is Miss Haran. She wasn't officially my counselor, but I had a good relationship with her. And there was my senior year, it was normal for me to get pulled out of class during those last few periods from a college recruiter. And so, usual, get called down to the library. There's somebody who wants to see Kevin Organ, and so in this particular instance, it was Hofstra. Hofstra had already offered me a scholarship to play for them. And so this guy came out, he wanted to see me in person. We talked and we sat down, and he showed me a list of every player they put in the NFL, every player they put in the CFL, and all their former draft picks. And one of those guys was Marcus Colston. All right. If you're a young guy and you're watching right now, you probably have no clue who Marcus Colston is. Marcus Colston is one of the all-time Saints, New Orleans Saints leading receivers. He attended Hofstra. And so what this recruiter was telling me is that, hey, we think that you are the next Marcus Colston. And, that was humbling and a confidence booster too, because these were the things I was hearing from a lot of the heavy passing schools, which were a lot of the MAC schools at the time, who were pass heavy, receiver friendly. That's where I wanted to be. I did not want to be in if I had a ton of choices, and I committed to Navy, I would decommit, or not commit at all. I would have committed to somewhere who's going to throw the ball, right? And so I would have took the lesser to get, more out of things as a wide receiver. And so, I was looking to be what they were already telling me that I could be. And so I really wanted to be that. They were telling me that I could be the next draft pick. And that's what they were believing, that the talent level that I had. They're like, you're going to be the next draft pick. Other teams were telling me the same thing. Bowling Green, Buffalo, Akron, Toledo, Ohio University. Like, these schools were offering me, and coupled with that, letting me know that they felt like I could be that next one. So, that was a lot. That meant a lot from a kid in the city. And it spoke a lot about, for me, what I already felt. I already felt I was a Division I type guy. And so, hearing that from the coaches was great, and it's for me. So again, back to the story. I got pulled out of class. I'd just like to give you guys backstory, because this is how you find out, right? And so Hofstra pulled me out. He says, hey, it was a quick visit. He's like, we'll continue to watch you this season. You know, we'll be sending you letters. Can't wait to get you out on campus. We'll keep reaching out, stay in touch. You know, they're always asking who's recruiting you. You know, who's interacting with you, what other Division I schools are offering you, what other Division I schools are you talking with? Because it's competitive, and so they're trying to get the top talent, and so, you know, that's pretty much what those meetings were about. So what he told me before he left, he says, "Hey man, send me your transcripts, and so we can get things rolling." Right. So I'm like, "Yes, sir, coach, I will." He gave me his business card. I took it to the counselor. I said, "Hey, I gotta send some transcripts to University of Hofstra." I'm like, can you send it to him, this coach?" She said, "Yeah, come back in a few periods, and you know, I'll have it ready for you." So I come back, and when I get to the door, she's like, "Get your butt in here." And I'm not going to use the language she used, but I'm like, whoa, like she never talks to me like this. So kind of confused, like, and she's like, "Get in here, sit down, shut my door." And I'm like, ooh, okay. Shut the door. Right. And she said, she hold up a piece of paper. She said, "You know what this is?" I said, my transcript. And she's like, "Have you ever even seen your transcript?" I'm like, not really. Like, I just play football, you know, and which was part of the problem, you know. But she says, I don't even know how you were eligible to play high school football. And I said, "What?" And I looked on this transcript, and I'm telling you guys right now, I was busting out consistent 1.3s, 1.5s, 1.8s, 1.7s. I was consistently getting below average, like 2.2, you know, maybe 2.4. So from freshman up into that point, I was so locked in on football. Football wise, I was the first guy in. I was the last one to leave. You had to kick me out of that building. You had to tell me to go home. That's how hard of a worker I was. But academically, I was not taking that same energy and putting it into my academic career in high school. And so it was a wake-up call, because she said, "Does your coach know about this?" I was like, "I don't know." I was clueless about my grades up until this point. And so I'm like, wow, I didn't know it was this bad. I didn't know it mattered this much, was another thing. And, you know, I didn't have a ton of guidance with how to navigate recruiting and how that directly correlates in your next opportunity. And so at this point, I'm literally, I was like, this was out of nowhere for me. So she goes on to say, like, she's like, "This is horrible. Your grades are horrible." And she's like, everybody knows you're talented. Everybody knows you could play in the NFL. She was like, "But you want to play in the NFL, like you want to play professional football sometimes, like, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I had never told her, I never told her I did want to play professional football. I never mentioned that at all. She just assumed. And I said, yeah. And she was like, you couldn't even get into college with these grades, and you got to go to college in order for you to play professional football. And man, the perspective clicked for me. It just clicked. And so it made sense, like, oh man, I literally wasted a lot of my freshman, sophomore, junior year not taking academics seriously and thinking that the two don't mix. Another mistake I made then was assuming that God was not involved in every aspect of my life. And so I did not involve God. I didn't have much of a prayer life, you know. I really didn't invest much into my relationship with the Lord at all. I quite frankly, then I really didn't think God cared about what I was doing with football. And nor did I really understand that then, that he gave me the gifts and talents to play the game. He gave me the dream, right? And so there was a lot of things I was ignorant of then, and this was a huge wake up call. And my counselor said, you need to turn this around. Like, you need to get this together, or you're not even going to go to college. And she said some other things I won't discuss, but thank God for her. Thank God for Miss Haran, because it was from that point on I really turned it around. I ended up, I had a few semesters left. Not much at all, but with what I had left, I got my first 3.0, first honor roll. Kind of did it multiple times and was able to get my GPA up to above a 2.0, which I worked so hard at the very end for, but it just wasn't enough time, right? Division I works on deadlines, right? And so if you aren't where you need to be, and by those deadlines, at least, during that time, you're going to lose your scholarship. And that's exactly what happened. I lost my offers. Schools were pulling those offers left and right. And once one does it, the rest follow suit, because, they're watching some of those guys talk. They know each other. These are things I didn't know then. All right. And so, once one pulls it, the other one pulls it, and the other one, and the other one, and the other one. Next thing you know, they're not sending letters anymore. They're not talking to you. It's very somewhat businesslike, even in high school, man. And so, again, I didn't know these things. I learned a lot of these things as I progressed, as on the back end. But I was humbled. You couldn't tell me nothing. I really believed I was going Division I. I knew I had the talent, knew I had the size, knew I had the speed. I knew that if given the platform, I could be the next draft pick for whoever. I really didn't care who it was. I already believed that. Again, the recruiters were just confirming what I already believed and what I already knew about myself. But what I didn't know was the importance of academics and how those two collide. And big mistake from me and others who were involved in my process. You could look at coaches, though I had great coaches, and I mentioned this last episode. Those are some of the greatest coaches I ever played for. But there's just certain aspects where there needs to be more accountability. And this is why the 2-parent home thing comes into play, right? Accountability, you know, they know how hard it is for a single mother, you know, a single parent to parent kids, you know, they were kids themselves, you know, and so, you know, just to give you guys a different perspective on this and just, you know, let you guys in on my football story, my high school story. It's a lesson learned, man. You know, being Division I, going Division I is possible, right? But you have to be all these things. You have to check all these boxes practically. Now, you may lack in some areas, and that's fine. All right. So as long as you are checking all those other boxes, recruiting is not too much different in a lot of ways than it is now. All right. We've come a long way. We've really advanced in recruiting and how that process works. But yeah, for me, speaking for myself, once I quickly lost those opportunities. And I had to start looking at Division II and Division III schools, and to kind of fast forward and bring this thing to a close. I was being recruited heavily by Cal U. Cal U is California University of Pennsylvania. All right. So not the California in Cali. All right. This is Pennsylvania. Right. Division II school. Everybody knows we function as a Division I. They were dominant as Perry was in high school. Cal U was dominant in Division II. And we'll get into more of that time next episode, what Cal U was like. But I took the SAT 4 times. Okay, I had to get a certain score in order to get into college, right? Not throw out all the athlete stuff, all the athletic stuff, and just focusing on, okay, how do we get me into school? My counselor was there every step of the way. Miss Haran never left my side with that. She emailed everybody she could. She contacted coaches. She was doing what should have been done early on as a freshman, helping me as a young kid who really doesn't know much. All right, guide me through what it took to stay on track, what it took to make sure to ensure that I was upholding my end of the bargain in the classroom and academically, so that I put myself in position to, at worst, get a great education, right? And so thank God again for Miss Haran. She helped me turn things around, helped me get my opportunity with Cal U. Cal U they came to the school 4 times, they said, trying to recruit me. Probably knew about all the D1 schools pulling out, and saw that I didn't commit to any Division I schools. And I'm telling you, the D2 schools, Clarion, they were like, you could start here right away. Slippery Rock, same thing. You know, all those other schools, Millersville at the time, all those other schools, Division II. But I wanted to be at the best, you know. And so we really pushed hard at Cal U, and I took the SAT 4 times to get the correct score that I needed to. That was long. That was hard. I finally got the score on the dot, my fourth try. And so I got that. I got accepted. They accepted me on as an associate, not as a 4-year student. So as a 2-year student, and not because of my grades, the grade ratio, and my SAT score. All they could do was try to get me in as an associate, and also I was on academic probation, and so I could not receive a full scholarship, though I was a full scholarship athlete, and a Division I, recruit. I had to come in a humble way that really broke me at first, and really could have broke me completely. But again, we'll talk more about that transition next episode. But I ended up committing to Cal U, and that was the start of a new journey as well. I could say a lot more this episode, man, but I am at an hour already with this. So I'm going to wrap it up, man. Guys, don't forget to like this video. If you're really enjoying this story, if you're like so into it, man, if you feel like there's kids, parents that need to hear more about this story, if you're just enjoying this story in general, man, click subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, share this thing. I'm sure I'll have many clips from this thing. Share the clips, man. Support the channel, support the movement. KO Universe Sports Journeys podcast right here, right now. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate all you guys listening. Whatever platform you are on, all of you are welcome, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. All right, peace.
Came out the bottom, I count a whole lot of young gonna worth millions of dollars. I asked out the charm, my little bitch modest. She made a few ends off for falling. Your one on tour, a few Peter Charlie. Living a cool title. Ain't no more worries, I'm up at it early. Your niggas tryna figure out the problem. But 30-30, I hit it like Curry. They hit me, I don't even holler. These niggas songs flopping. Niggas ain't gon' stop. Switch out my cars and my 80, my family straight, and that's all that matter. Stacking them rest and then saving, put back for whatever, whenever it happens. I put my trust in my paper, I'm walking through straight, I don't see no one else. No, it ain't long this route. Simmons is better missteps. Stay ready, I'm already prepped. Undefeated, I feel like the champ. My bitch love the hunters, we fucking get money, she turning my tongue to a champ. You did it, I done it, you know how it coming, you don't wanna show them what the world. Go pick up a pack and that's across the country and light up that smoke in the air. Bitch is so trim, I treat her like my twin when I shop and I buy by the pair.